Good afternoon, ladies, and happy Mother's Day. We'll be studying our 12th Bible study, The Woman with the Issue of Blood, and our key scriptures is going to be in Matthew chapter 9, verses 20 through 22, Mark chapter 5, verses 25 through 34, and Luke chapter 8, verses 43 through 48. The woman with the issue of the blood, her character, despite her healing, she ignored the conventions of the day just for a chance to touch Jesus. Now, we'll discuss this because this is showing a lot of faith that she really believed in Jesus, and just touching him she knew would heal her. So there was a large crowd that followed Jesus around, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors, and she'd spent all of her money, and she was even worse than what she was when she began. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd, and she just thought to herself, if I could just touch his garment, I will be healed. Now, ladies, that's faith. So, if she touched him, immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once, Jesus knew the healing power went out from him, and he started asking, who touched him? Okay, but Jesus kept looking around to see who had done this. And then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, she came down and fell at his feet, and she told him the whole truth, that she was the one that had touched his garment. And he said, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. Let's talk about the menstrual cycle back in those days. Any woman that had suffered through an issue of blood knows the difficulties, how it is with this type of disease. When the blood flows freely and frequently instead of its regular monthly pattern, women endure not only the untidiness of the condition, the aggravation of the condition, but also experience a loss of strength and possibly weight. The woman in this story, she suffered from such a hemorrhage for 12 years, she was probably very weak and thin. Because of the ritual of uncleanliness in those times that surrounded this condition, she most likely didn't often go out in public either. Imagine 12 years of this. When a woman had a discharge of blood for many days, at a time other than her monthly period, or discharge that continued beyond her period, she would be considered unclean long as she had the discharge, just as in the days of her period. Any bed she would lie in would be considered contaminated. Anything she touched was considered contaminated. Anything she sat on, anything that was around her, and whoever touched her would be considered unclean. She must bath and wait for the time to come where she would be considered clean again. During this time, a woman was considered unclean for at least 7 days when she had a regular period. And this is in Leviticus 15:19 that explains this. But this woman, however, bore not only the inconvenience of this curse of being unclean for 12 years. Anything that touched her became unclean. Imagine, she gives her husband a plate of food that's considered unclean. Then he becomes unclean. She gives her neighbor a hand doing the laundry. The laundry becomes unclean, so therefore the neighbor's unclean. Before long, everyone is aware of her uncleanliness, and no one wants to be around her. Well, many different female conditions could have caused the woman's ailment. She could have fibroid tumors. She could have had endometriosis, and hormone imbalance. There's all kinds of things that would cause this, and possibly cancer also. Well, whatever the cause, the doctor had seen her years and years. They totally broke her. She had no more money. Her last hope was Jesus. So, still, no matter how much money she spent or how much agony she endured, her sickness was never cured until she met God, who can do the impossible. What doctors couldn't do, Jesus could do. No repulsive, no painful remedies, no visits to the doctors anymore, No more financial money she'd have to spend. With just a soft, loving touch of his coat, she was cured, healed, freed immediately. Hallelujah. That's what Jesus can do for us. The glory of Christ is that he succeeds where others fail. He brings healing when doctors say none is possible. He offers forgiveness when the heart says it can never be forgiven. He extends comfort when the agony is too great. We get peace when there's chaos. He presented this sick woman with all the possibilities after 12 years of the impossibility. Jesus can do the impossible. Okay, ladies, let's talk a little bit about some questions here. Choose 3 words that best describe the kind of suffering experienced by this woman who had been bleeding for 12 long years. Probably this woman accidentally touched others in a crowd when she was trying to touch Jesus. What do you think the crowd would thought if they knew exactly what her condition was? Describe how you might feel if you had the opportunity to actually touch Jesus physically. That would be wonderful, wouldn't it? This woman tried everything in order to be healed, and when Jesus came to her village, she knew she had an option. How often do you try every other option before we turn to God? Is he often our last resort?